I wasn't all that interested in visiting Cyprus. I was basically just ticking another country off the list for my cornflake mission. But I spent nearly 2 weeks camping and sleeping in the car and found enough to keep me entertained. It was the end of a 2-month trip which started with a month in Jordan, followed by a couple of weeks touring around Israel and Palestine. And when I flew out of Tel Aviv, I left feeling like a caged animal after my time in what is effectively a police state. I landed in Cyprus needing to feel free, so I picked up my bag, walked straight out the airport and kept on walking until I reached the coast. Next day I did some hitchhiking and plenty of walking, so progress was slow, and I realised I wasn't going to see the sights of Cyprus travelling in this way. Especially when I found out the island was much bigger than I had expected, stretching 240 kilometres one way and 100 kilometres the other. I got a ride to Limassol and was dropped right next to some suggestive graffiti, so I took the hint and hired a little economy car the next morning, after I camped close to the city at a spot which I found out about 10 o'clock that evening was a meeting place for gay guides.
In the last half an hour I must have had 6 or 7 cars just turn up, park there for about 10 minutes and then piss off again. It's cultural. This is obviously what they have to do to hide from their religious parents.
Cyprus is widely used by the tourist industry, famous for its beaches and its ruins, but not so famous for its national symbol, which is a sheep. It is also known as the original island of love due to it being the former home of Aphrodite.
So this is where Aphrodite used to come and bathe and where she allegedly met Adonis as well. Beautiful little spot right on the west coast of Cyprus, very nice.
From the baths I drove along the north coast to see a part of the island where I imagine very few tourists go.
So I'm here in the least touristy part of Cyprus, right on the other side of the island next to the Turkey border. About to have a Kio beer. So cheers, here's to silly hats.
After a night sleeping in the car, I returned to the more populated part of the island and started to visit some of the main tourist attractions on offer.
So this little beautiful spot here is where Aphrodite emerged from the waters. She is the goddess of love and beauty, and she emerged right here a while ago.
Everywhere I drove I came across the uniquely shaped Orthodox churches, so while looking around Larnaca I paid a visit to one of the more famous ones, which was typically humble and covered in gold in a way that Jesus would detest. Interestingly, locals flocked here to kiss pictures of their deities.
This is Larnaca Salt Lake, which is wedged between the airport and Larnaca, which you can see in the distance there. It's been inhabited since the Neolithic times, according to evidence that's been found in the area. It's currently inhabited by a swarm of flamingos over there. So this mosque here in the background is called Hala Sultan Tekesi Mosque, and it's supposed to be the 4th most religious spot for the Muslims. That's according to the Cyprus Tourist Board. It was built in 648 AD when a woman called Haram died when she fell off her mule during one of the first Arab raids on the island, and according to tradition, Haram was related to the Prophet Muhammad, and when she fell off and died, it was ordered that this mosque be built. Quite an interesting spot. It's a beautiful place. Well, relatively speaking, beautiful spot for Cyprus.
I stopped in the infamous Ayia Napa and saw the influence of Aphrodite in the modern world. But after a beer I chose to drive a few kilometres away to Cape Greco, an area of natural beauty offered as a place to visit on tours. It was nice enough with a natural bridge, a little church and a small cave with the Mediterranean crashing against the rocks. I slept the night there in the car, then next morning found an interesting spot to have some flakes.
So this is country number 69, Cyprus. It's a weird cornflake moment. You can see no man's land is behind me, and there's an abandoned city off into the distance called Amorphagasta. Now, I did not expect to find this when I came to Cyprus, but since I've been here, I've discovered that in 1974, the Turks basically occupied 37% of the land. And in that moment, something like 200,000 Greeks fled this what was a tourist town behind me, and they've come into the Greek part, and this has just remained abandoned ever since that moment. The Turkish military have not allowed anyone to move back in.
and now it's just a ghost town. It's really weird. So I've come to what is a viewpoint and a museum, but it's closed because it's Sunday. So I'm just going to have my cornflakes here and show you this interesting spot.
From the viewpoint overlooking the abandoned town, I drove to Nicosia to see the last divided capital on the planet, with its obvious signs of division and a border that you can temporarily cross to see a mosque and buy some Turkish goods.
Αναζητώ και ταξιδεύω μέχρι και τον Άρη. Θέλω να πάω φίλε εκεί που άνθρωπος δεν πάει. Μα δεν μπορώ και το ξέρω αυτό κι ας με χαλάει. Με το μυαλό μου θα πάω στα απάτηκα.
I tried to cross the border in the car, but my plans changed when I reached the passport control area. So I just tried to cross the border from the Greek part of Cyprus to the North Turkish part, and I got there and they want 25 euros because the insurance I have in the south doesn't cover the north. So I'm now sat here thinking I'm at the end of my trip, I don't have much money left, and more than anything I fucking hate insurance companies. So it doesn't feel right to just pay 25 euros to go and see what is... There doesn't seem to be much there really. Basically mosques and churches, I've seen plenty of those. And the other thing is that there's a festival, a carnival down in Limassol today. So maybe that's the better thing to do. I stopped off to take a look at the carnival, which is considered one of the most notable carnival events worldwide. A 10-day colourful event of satire, feasting, singing, games, processions and some extravagant outfits. Sadly I was a bit late, so I only caught the tail end of it, but I got to see enough of a legacy left behind by the Venetians who ruled over Cyprus during the 15th and 16th centuries. Cyprus has been ruled by many cultures over the years. The Romans, Egyptians, Persians, right up until the Brits have all occupied and taken advantage of Cyprus's strategic location. And the most enjoyable tourist attraction I visited during my time on the island were ruins left behind by a couple of those cultures.
So this building would have looked absolutely amazing. You can see how big it is. I think they said something like 1,200 square feet. And behind me over here, you can see there was a wall as well that was decorated. So the floors, the walls, and most probably the ceilings would have been completely covered in artwork and mosaics. And down here is all the marble tiles or remnants of that would have gone all the way around here. Beautiful place. Even now, but God knows what it would have looked like when it was in its heyday. And here we see more gods. I just wonder what was in the minds of the people that made these things. Probably not a lot. Do as you're told or you get beaten. There's a lot of patterns in these mosaics as well. Possibly sacred geometry. These are supposed to be set from the Roman times. This one over here is beautiful. It's very big. So big you can't really see it all in the camera, but it's obviously a beautiful pattern. And then the picture in the middle, another mythological scene of these gods doing certain things to each other. Tiny little bits of tile.
Όχι από βροχές, μα δάκρυσμένα μάτια. Τι μου θύμισες, μόνο τέλος την στην αρχή απέκτησες, μα κάτι τήρησες τα δεδομένα. Τι ψενοχλούνε, το γνωρίζω πιο πολύ για αυτήν απόγνωση που βλέπω σε δικούς μου κάθε μέρα. Μετρώντας τα σκαλιά εκτός αυτού που πατά το πέλμα. Με κράτησα δικός να εξχώρα βάντα αέρα. Να μην μου πεις κάποια στιγμή ότι ξύπνησες στραβά και θες να φύγεις το τουλάχιστον.
After the ruins, I drove into the largest mountain range in Cyprus, located roughly in the centre of the island. There are numerous villages set in picturesque valleys with typical Byzantine churches and monasteries, 9 of which form a UNESCO World Heritage Site as they are richly decorated with murals. I went to one of the mountain resorts and had the coldest night's sleep on the whole trip, parking not far from the top of the highest peak at 1,952 metres. In the morning I walked a 14-kilometre loop, spending much of the time in the clouds and choosing the moment to finish my box of flakes. I drove back down, visiting an area where they produce a half-decent wine before visiting one last place and taking the car back.
So this is St. Nicholas Monastery of the Cats. It's supposed to be the oldest monastery on the island. It's so called because hundreds of years ago there was a snake infestation on this Cape de Gata, which is Spanish for cat and I'm assuming Greek too. And there was St. Nicholas ordered the release of thousands of cats to kill all the snakes. And there's still a few around now. It sounds like there's a ceremony going on, so I'm going to have a little look around.
You see 2 cats, but God knows what's going on in there.
Αγκαθασίας, αγίασον πάντων ημών αψυχάς και τα σώματα αγιασμόνα Θεέτου.
So I'm on my way to take the car back now. It's turned out to be a really good way of seeing the island and saving money. Before I came to Cyprus, it looked like the cheapest hostels were around 20 euros. And this car has cost me 145 euros for the whole week. That's everything, the petrol, insurance, blah, blah, blah. I got to see over 1,050 kilometers of the island and I've counted some beautiful places. So not only have I seen huge amounts, I've saved some money. Just got to hope I don't crash it on the way to take it back. But a great way of travelling.
I walked some of the way back to the airport but was delighted to be picked up by a really open-minded reverend who reminded me I shouldn't judge people as he had a great understanding of the biased power structure in the world which massively favours the elite. I camped on the beach again and wrote in my diary that night that the highlights of the country were the abandoned city, annoyingly not open to the public, and the ruins close to Paphos. And although I enjoyed my visit, it was far from an amazing country. Great for tourists, but not so great for travellers.
Yum, yum, yum. Corn flakes.